Those eyes disguise our height. Bright lights decide the flight. Your heart beats fast despite the truth that love is blind. I just wanna feel anything.
Welcome to the Clean and Filthy podcast with your host, Matthew M.
Hello and welcome back to the Clean and Filthy podcast, where we are clean and serene with a filthy mind in between. I am your host, Matthew M., and I am an addict in recovery. Welcome back, everybody. We are on episode 19. Every single time the number gets higher, I lose my mind a little bit more. I don't even understand how this is happening, but I know it's because of all of you wonderful people out there listening and watching this podcast. Thank you so much. I love you all. Even though I'm going to tell you later, I'm going to tell you right now as well. Hope everybody had a beautiful week. Hopefully, if you're in Arizona or in the Southwest, you were able to avoid the ridiculous heat that was this last week. Oh my God, I swear it was like walking in a furnace. It was awful. But hopefully you're here, had a wonderful week, and you're ready for an amazing episode. Like I said, we are on episode 19. We're going to be talking about tradition number 7. We're going to be talking about my favorite moment of the week, answering more questions, and giving them clean time shout-outs. Before we go any further, we got to give a huge thank you to our episode sponsor, Etc. by Emily. If you are ever looking for any party staffing or event staffing, or if you're looking for a job, make sure to check out all of her information listed in the description below. Also have to give a huge thank you, as always, to Valentino Khan, Alice in Wonderland, and Mad Decent Records for allowing us to use the incredible song Anything. So all that information for download is below as well. I have to give a special thank you to our VIP supporters. These are the people on Patreon who are helping grow this podcast. So if you're interested in making a donation to our podcast and therefore to the end product, please head over to Patreon. Best way to get there, go to the website, www.cleanandfilthypodcast.com. The top right corner, you'll see a Patreon link. You can head right over there to make a donation. And for everybody who makes a donation, you'll get one of these awesome Clean and Filthy stickers that you can put wherever you like. Help grow this brand. So if you're wanting to be like one of these people, please head over to the website. And those people are our amazing VIP supporters of Alex B, Cindy, Stephanie, Shar, Clint, and Alex T. Thank you all so much. We're actually in the process of putting up some ads for this podcast on Instagram and hopefully on Snapchat as well. So if you guys happen to see an ad for the Clean and Filthy podcast, screenshot it, send it over to me. Let me know that this money's actually getting our podcast out there. So please, if you do happen to see it, do that. Also have to give a huge what up to everybody who is partaking right now in the live stream. For those who don't know, we do this each episode live at 5 p.m. Arizona time every single Tuesday, and we are live on YouTube. We, depending on the day, we get a fun group of people in a live chat. It's always fun for me to go back and read all of the comments afterwards. I love watching that. So, if you're wanting to check that out, head on over to YouTube. Make sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube page so that you will get a notification as soon as we go live. And if you're not on YouTube right now and you want to be, head on over there. If you are on YouTube, please make sure that you are subscribed to our channel. Really helps us grow, and maybe share, like, comment, subscribe, all that. Make sure you are subscribed on all the social medias so you get all of the information about the Clean and Filthy podcast first and foremost. If you are watching live on YouTube and you really want to help support, please make sure to download this episode wherever you consume podcasts on. We are on all podcast directories: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We're on Spotify, Deezer, a bunch of different ones. So if you're watching live and you want to help support this channel, please make sure to download our episodes as well, and throw us a rating. If you feel like you hear something you like, share it, throw us a rating. Whatever you can do to help us, we really appreciate it. And if you're not watching on YouTube right now and you're listening on a podcast directory, thank you. Thank you for checking us out. Whether you're somebody that I spammed on Twitter, or maybe somebody previously listened and they shared something here, and you are now here. So welcome. Welcome to the Clean and Filthy podcast. Want to give a little bit of background of what we are, what we do. Again, my name is Matthew M. I am an addict in recovery, and this is the Clean and Filthy podcast. We are a 12-step recovery-based podcast that is live every single Tuesday at 5 p.m. Arizona time on YouTube, with episodes available for download wherever you consume your podcasts from later on that evening. So if you're here for the first time, welcome. I really hope you hear something you like. And if you do, please make sure to share it. That is how we are growing as an independent podcast. We don't have any, major funding. We don't have any partnerships with any major companies. We're just out here growing based on word of mouth, based on what you guys out there are doing for us. And the more that you guys do, the more that we're able to help people. And that is the end goal. So as I said, we are a 12-step fellowship-based a podcast, but to making sure that I stay in line with the traditions, I will not be affiliating with any one specific fellowship. I will not be endorsing any specific treatment centers or my home group or my fellowship of choice. I will not be discussing any, recovery residences or sober livings or anything like that, to make sure that, I'm not violating anything from a tradition standpoint. But if you have questions about those resources, or how to get to a meeting, or how to find a sponsor, or what fellowship might be best for you, please make sure to reach out to me directly. You can reach me at Matthew@CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com, or you can head to the website, again, www.CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com, and check out any of the social media links. Send me a message through the website, whatever you want to do to get in contact with me, because I would be more than happy to help with those type of things, but we just aren't going to be discussing them here on the podcast. This podcast is about developing unity within recovery. It's about developing understanding of what addicts like myself go through and how we recover, and what we do on a daily basis. So if you're here for the first time and you're kind of like, why am I here? I'm not an addict. I don't, have anybody directly affiliated with me that's an addict. Maybe you'll hear something you like, because I always say that the beautiful thing about recovery is that it's not simply about taking the drugs away. That's maybe where it started. But the reason I stay in recovery is to grow and become a better human being, and learn about myself and learn for ways to get better. And I believe anybody can grow from the 12-step recovery model, whether you're an addict or not. So if you are an addict in recovery, welcome. You're right where you need to be. If you're an addict who's not in recovery, welcome. You're right where you need to be. If you're not an addict at all, you're a normie and you just want to check this podcast out, welcome. Thank you. I'm glad that you're here, and hopefully you hear something that connects with you, and you'll come back next week. So, again, this is not going to replace going to a meeting or calling your sponsor or doing step work or tradition work or, being of service. That's not what the point of this podcast is. This podcast is just an added bonus to recovery. This is an opportunity to get the message of recovery out to more people who maybe never have been, exposed to the 12-step fellowship model, to the 12-step recovery model. Maybe have never directly been impacted, to the best of their knowledge by the disease of addiction. But this gives an opportunity to answer some questions, to give some clarity, to shed light on what us addicts go through, and show that we do recover. That the person I was 3.5 years ago is not the person I am today. And that is all because of the 12-step recovery model. So I'm so glad you're here. We've had an amazing week, have lots to talk about in my favorite moments of the week. It's been a beautiful week, even though I'm pretty sure that I was, third-degree burns over all of my soul from the ridiculous weather out here. But you're here, I'm here, we are ready to go. Let's get into episode 19 in our first segment of the week called Recovery and Development.
Let's head to the lab for some R&D. Recovery and Development.
That's right, y'all. It is time to head to the lab. Got them lab coats, got our goggles on, got our gloved up, and we are going to get into some recovery and development. This is the part of the show where each week we take either a step, a tradition, a concept, or a spiritual principle from the 12-step recovery model, and we discuss it. We go over the basics of it. We discuss what it says in the literature. We discuss how us addicts implement this into our daily life. So this is definitely the part of the show that really gets into recovery. And again, like I said, if you're not an addict, that's perfectly fine, because these steps and these traditions and these spiritual principles are things that we implement into our lives that have nothing to do with not using drugs. When I first got here, the whole point was to not use drugs. But now I'm able to find these ways and means to grow and become a better human being. So stick around. Maybe you'll hear something you like. If you do, please make sure you subscribe and tweet and retweet and share. Please share this podcast. That is how we grow. So, episode number 19, which means because of my horrible numbering scheme, we are on tradition number 7. We've got to talk about this every time before we get into the meat of that tradition. But the traditions are that next level recovery vibe. Steps are pretty intro. The things that we really relate to our active drug use. The traditions are that next level. And we are into the 7th part of that next level. So there's going to be a lot of stuff to unpack, even though this is a pretty straightforward tradition, but there's still a lot of stuff to unpack. So before I read the tradition, I want to make sure everybody knows that when you hear this little sensor beep, that's supposed to be there, because I want to make sure to read the tradition as it is read, but I don't want to affiliate with any one specific fellowship. So you will hear a sensor beep instead of that fellowship's name. So what does tradition 7 say? It says that every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. Now, this is one of the traditions that most everybody who's gotten into recovery in some amount remembers. The 7th tradition is kind of known as the money tradition. And while that does make sense why it's called that, we're going to discuss a lot more further on how there's so many more things involved than simply money. But of course, if you go to a meeting, every meeting takes what's called a 7th tradition. And that is when we will pass the hat, essentially. And it is a collection of donations by addicts to further that group. That is, as it says there, from self-supporting. So we're going to break this down. We're going to look at a lot of different things in here. But I wanted to start it off with this quote that I love from the literature. It says, "The 7th tradition is our statement of abundance and sharing, fulfillment and support, our commitment to the addict who still suffers and to ourselves." So that's what the 7th tradition is all about. But don't worry, we're going to get a lot more into it here. We always got to look at the spiritual principles. What are the spiritual principles within this tradition? Starting off, we've got independence, we've got unity, we've got gratitude, definitely responsibility, autonomy, freedom, sacrifice, integrity, and generosity. Those are the ones that really jump out to me. Like I say each episode, the more that you get into traditions, the more that spiritual principles become apparent. So for me, those are the ones that really stick out. We got to talk about the fact that, tradition 7 really ties in with the other traditions, especially tradition 6. Because last week we talked about in tradition 6 about, not getting diverted, making sure the message is not diverted by any kind of outside enterprise, or making sure that we don't have any kind of issues with money, property, or prestige, diverting our message. And so this tradition is like the next level within adding to that safety. The traditions really do build off each other. 5 directly goes into 6, and now 6 is adding that extra layer of 7. It's like 7 is like an additional bulletproof shield to go over the group, if you will. Because at the end of the day, while this isn't just about money, this tradition does tie into a lot about money. And money is one of the easiest ways to get diverted. Whether it's personally, whether it's the message, whatever it is, money and the potential character defects of greed and insecurity and, whatever that go along with it really could end up diverting the message. And the beautiful thing with, being self-supporting keeps us unaffiliated. We're going to talk about that a little bit further down within this tradition. But let's look at the terms here. What does self-supporting mean? Well, according to the dictionary, it is defined as having the resources to be able to survive without outside assistance. This obviously speaks to money directly, but there are also a lot of other variables that we're going to talk about as we go a little bit further down. Money is the first thing that jumps out. Supporting yourself, a group, your child, whatever, has to have some type of monetary resource involved. So that is definitely a part of this, but it's not the only part. And we will discuss further on. See, that was a little cliffhanger. I gave you a little teaser there, like, ooh, well, what are the other things? What else are we going to discuss about it? I guess you're just going to have to hang out and find out, ain't you? Mm-hmm.
That part.
That's right. So I'm hyped today. I'm really hyped today. So we got to look at it says in the literature, and I love this quote. It says, when we commit to self-support, we take responsibility for our well-being and our future. And that right there is something that doesn't have to do with recovery alone. Like making a commitment to being self-supporting and taking responsibility, for our well-being and our future, that ties to everybody. Like, sure, that directly affects the addict in recovery, but that affects anybody in life. Again, why I love recovery, because it can be applied in all areas of life. It's not just about not using drugs. So I kind of want to look at what being self-supporting means directly for the individual member, the individual recovering addict. And then I also want to look at how that ties in with the group as a whole. Because we've talked about before, the traditions are much more affiliated with the groups, where the steps are more for the individual person, and then the concepts are more specifically for service work. So I want to still tie this in, even though the traditions are about groups, I want to still tie it into an individual member aspect. And when we look at it, it says in the literature, it says, in our addiction, we were dependent on people, places, and things. And that is so true. For any addict like myself, we were dependent on that dope man answering the phone. We were dependent on that dope man actually showing up where he was going to be. Obviously not on time. He was always going to be at least a couple hours late, like that was a given. But we were dependent on those things. I personally was dependent on Walmart, on other places that I stole things from so that I could have money. I was dependent on other people. I was reliant on so many things. Whereas, I was never really self-supporting. I wasn't self-supporting at any point especially towards the end of my active addiction. And while, money is always an issue, money's always an issue in active addiction. There's never enough money in active addiction. Like, all the money in the world isn't gonna solve my problems. So the money, not having money means it's pretty difficult to not be, it's pretty difficult to be self-supporting. And one thing I like about that element is that for a lot of us, myself included, money was one of the biggest things that led me to my rock bottom and gave me that gift of desperation. Because if I did have, a lot more money, I probably wouldn't have gone to treatment when I did. But the fact that I could not support myself in any way, shape, or form anymore, the fact that I was just so beaten to the point of despair, that lack of resources really led me to hit that bottom and, kind of initiated me onto the runway of recovery. So, money is an interesting thing. It kind of can go from both ways there. And, when it comes to now being in recovery, that's a big change for us. Addicts, as it says in the literature, it says addicts and responsibility are a difficult combination. And that's a true statement. That's a very true statement. In active addiction, what was responsibility? I had none. None. I've shared about that before. Trying to hold a job, even if it was helping my mother and her company. That there were so many things that would have to occur before I could even go and do work for her. I couldn't hold a responsibility. You want me there at 11 o'clock in the morning? I haven't slept in 3 days. I fell asleep at 6 a.m. and I slept until 11 p.m. I'm sorry. There was no responsibilities. But now that we're in recovery, we get this opportunity to be responsible. We get this opportunity, and it can be difficult. It can be very difficult, especially early on. Carrying those responsibilities can be a lot. And I want to make a distinction here that, being in recovery doesn't mean that we aren't dependent anymore. But what it does mean is that we're not dependent on those people, places, and things. We are dependent on our higher power. That doesn't change. So while, we are no longer dependent on people, places, and things, and we're able to be much more self-supporting, we still are very much dependent on having that loving and caring higher power, but not on the things around us, not on the money, on the people, on the places, because anything, whether it be money, whether it be prestige, whether it be whatever, can turn into a negative. It can become the focus, like we always say, 1 is too many and 1,000 never enough. And that doesn't just mean drugs. That doesn't just mean that, because so many of these elements that we'll come into contact with, especially around money, tie into greed, tie into jealousy, tie into possessiveness and insecurities and fear. But we can walk through all of those when we depend on our higher power. That's the beautiful thing about it, is that when we take the focus off of, I need to have the nicest car and the most money and the hottest boyfriend, and the hottest girlfriend, and this and that, and when we take those things away and we just focus on developing that communication and that relationship with our higher power, all those things and the character defects that often tie into them can just kind of go away. And I'm not saying money's not an issue. I'm not saying that. Because money will always be an issue, especially, for an addict like myself, who's not the best with money, who's never been the best with money, especially not in active addiction. But I've never been great with money. So money's always going to be an issue, but it's not the issue. It's not the only issue like it was for so many of us in active addiction. And this tradition helps remind us of that. That yes, money is an issue, but it's not the only issue. So there's some direct tie-in that I want to mention that I really like about this, because it's something that personally within my life is something I use as a living amends. And that is the tie-in between Tradition 7 and Step 9. And it's because, when we are responsible for ourselves, we are making amends to society as a whole. It says in the literature, it says that together, Tradition 7 and Step 9 offer restitution, restoration, and resolution. And that's very true, because when I'm out supporting myself and being a productive member of society, I am making a direct amends to that society as a whole. I'm no longer running amok and being a nuisance to the public. now I'm able to be an asset and support myself and help others. Like that's a beautiful thing. So I love that tie-in there. And I got to also, reference here that it says, tradition 7, it doesn't mean that we as soon as we get to tradition 7, we're like, I'm self-supporting, I reject everything else, I'm perfectly independent, reject any and all help. What it means is that we're able to now have a guide to take responsibilities for ourselves and our decisions based on principles. So we are able to understand what the price and the consequence might be of our decisions, especially those that are financial. So I'm not saying that we're just like, no, I'm now in recovery, I'm self-supporting, I'm not asking for help, I'm not taking anything from anybody, I'm independent. That's not what we're saying. That's not what we're saying at all. But this tradition allows me to be self-supporting within my thought process, within my decision making, to weigh out the benefits of those decisions. And, I can personally attest to this. Like, it feels good being able to do something. I've discussed this a lot. Like, when I first got clean, when I first came into recovery, I needed a lot of help from my family, from people around me, from other members of the fellowship. I didn't have a job. My son was born 2 months to the day after I got clean. So child support, there's, diapers, there's, all those things that I needed help with. So it's not saying, nope, I'm not going to take anybody's help. It's about being able to accept that help and now get to the point where I can take care of those things. And it's not an overnight thing. We don't just get clean and, all of our problems go away. For some people, all of our problems never go away. So I just want to mention that I'm able to realize the things that I cannot personally do. And I have the humility to ask for help with them. And that's a difficult thing at times, because I'm the type of person, I like to be able to do everything. I don't need anybody, but I do. The reason why I'm in recovery is because I needed help, because I couldn't do it on my own. So finding that line between being self-supporting and what I can personally do and what I need, assistance with is a beautiful insight of recovery. And I want to make sure to tie in this aspect because while, the 7th tradition is about money in a lot of ways, I always want to make sure to emphasize that as we talk about in the 3rd, tradition, there's no requirement for membership other than the desire to stop using. So it does not cost anything to be a member of a recovery fellowship. I want to make sure to emphasize that while, the groups are self-supporting by contributions from within its members, that does not mean that you have to put money in the basket when you go to a meeting. If you can, awesome. You're helping further our primary purpose of carrying the message. If you can't, that's fine. They talk about in the literature about stories of people like panhandling just so that they could put money into the basket when that's not necessary, because as we're going to talk about a little bit further, there are so many other ways that we are self-supporting that have nothing to do with money. So I just wanted to make sure to tie in that 3rd tradition element to, as we're talking a lot about money, I don't want somebody sitting there thinking, oh, well, I don't have money, I can't go to a meeting. That's not the vibe at all. So I want to now look at, how this tradition directly impacts the groups. How is it that groups are being self-supporting? So it says in the literature, it says, whatever a group needs to fulfill its primary purpose should be provided by the group itself. Now, there's some curiosity here because there's 2 statements in this tradition. One of them is kind of conditional. The other one is absolute. So why does it say in the tradition, it says that, they ought to be self-supporting, not that they must be or that they need to be? And again, like I said, because that is a conditional statement. And what it means is that, a lot of groups, when they first start off, will get help from other groups or the area or the region, something else. So it's not just that group that is supporting itself in the beginning. And even later on, there are sometimes groups that have been around for a while start struggling a little bit, and other groups will be able to band together to help. But that help always comes from within that fellowship. Within that specific fellowship, groups from one fellowship aren't out supporting groups from another fellowship. Private companies aren't out supporting either one of them. It comes from within. So then the second part of that, talks about the definite, the 100%. This is what it is. This is an absolute statement. We decline outside contributions. Period. Period. There's no oughts or shoulds. That is an absolute statement. And, it's because self-support, it says in the literature that self-support ensures that our message stays clear and true, and that we remain uncompromised and unaffiliated. Now, before we go in a little bit further here, I do want to make one little point. For anybody who maybe isn't that familiar with the traditions and now is maybe going to be getting into service and needs a little bit of information on this. Subcommittees and service boards are not fully self-supporting, just so that's known. Service boards, subcommittees, they have budgets, they have expenses, and they are not personally funded by the members of that subcommittee or service group. They are funded by either other groups or the area or the region, but still never from outside sources. Like I personally am a chair of a subcommittee, and my subcommittee doesn't, I don't put money into a basket for my subcommittee. My subcommittee budget comes from the region. So I just want to make sure that is understood, that there's no, confusion about that they're like, I don't want you to go get into a service position and be like, oh, well, I'm ready to pay money for this. No, it comes from, other groups or the area or the region. Now we'll get back to that element of declining outside contributions, which is a complete and absolute statement. And there's a lot of reasons why. One thing is that it gives the fellowship the autonomy to be able to carry a clear message, to be able to provide that primary purpose without any other worries, without any affiliations, without any endorsements, without any cosigns or retweets or anything like that, because that opens up the possibility, as we talked about last week, for the message to get diverted. And that is something we can't have. And if anyone from outside of the fellowship were to be directly supporting a group, inevitably it's going to come up where, that in the end, there's going to be influence or control or something. If somebody's getting, let's say, like if a meeting is at a Christian church and the Christian church says, okay, well, we're going to, pay for this and we're going to sponsor this meeting. Well, how's that going to look for somebody who maybe is Jewish or Muslim or, doesn't vibe with Christianity? So if we do that, we're potentially, by being affiliated, by taking that outside contribution, it very possibly could lessen our message. It could diminish and divert our primary purpose, which we cannot have. And this gets interesting because there are those things where even if, obviously a lot of donations and, types of money coming in are obviously going to have some strings attached. But what about those things that are, they're genuinely just no strings attached? Somebody that's not a member wants to help. Even when we have things like that, we still can't accept it. Because even if it's not from like an outside enterprise, perspective of them trying to piggyback off of our name or trying to, get their name in association with us, even if it's not something like that, even if it's just a member, a non-member wants to donate food, that's not okay. And for some people, they're going to be like, well, that's dumb. Like, these people want to help, let them help. And while we appreciate the support, and, we love that, we can't accept that because, again, it's that would be an outside contribution. Because even when it doesn't seem like there would be any string attached, even when it doesn't seem like it could do any negative at all, it still threatens the integrity of the fellowship and of the primary purpose. And that might not seem, that'd be like, well, why? That company just wants to donate some food. What's the big deal? But still, that could lead, even though it might not 100 or 99 out of 100 times, that one time that it might could have very detrimental effects on the integrity of the fellowship, and we can't have that. It says in the literature, it says we must be very cautious in our relationships with those outside the fellowship, continually checking our practices and our motives, because when we have interactions with the outside world, outside of the recovery fellowships, there might be times where we don't even think about the fact of this could be a violation of a tradition. If somebody's just wanting to help out, as much as we appreciate it, that could be a violation of traditions. So one of the beautiful things about the fact that we're self-supporting within the fellowship is that it changes how the public sees us. It says in the literature that our commitment to self-support sends a unique and compelling message to the outside world as well. And that's a fact because we support us. We aren't out there looking for donations or grants. I'm not, walking around through parking lots like, hey, you want to donate to blank fellowship? We don't do that. And that is because, again, we support us. And we aren't looking for anything in return. All we want from the public is being able to carry a clear message of recovery. So we don't need to go door to door, asking for donations or asking for commitments to pledge to whatever. We don't need to do that, because then that opens up the possibility of our message getting diverted. So while, we've talked about this in the above, that while this does have a lot to do with money, there are a lot of other aspects to it. Money is not the only issue within this tradition, because self-supporting means a lot more than just money. It says in the literature, it says, through self-support, we demonstrate our commitment to each other. And we always need to kind of factor in, are we fulfilling our primary purpose before we make a decision, both with money or with time? Because both of those are finite resources. And when you take the money out of it, there's still so many other ways that we are self-supporting. But it demands unity and it demands action. So what are some other ways that we can contribute without the money aspect of it? By time, energy, creativity, our experience, strength, and hope that we share, love, commitment to showing up to a meeting, to a home group, building that stability for that home group, giving back what was so freely given to us. Those are the ways that we can carry that message and support ourselves without the use of any kind of financial, donation. If somebody, especially when I was early on, I wasn't able to put money in the basket. So I made sure that I was always there to be a service. I was making sure that I was always there to mop up the spilled coffee and clean out the coffee pots, help stack chairs, because those are all ways that we can support ourselves that don't require direct financial contributions. If you can give money, awesome. But giving time is just as vital. That's the next quote that I'm going to read here from the literature. It says, group service and active group membership are two vital contributions to group self-support. Contributions that don't cost any money at all.
That part.
So that element of the seventh tradition being the money tradition really isn't truthful. While it has that tie-in because of passing the hat, passing the basket each meeting, that's not what it really is about. It's about the group as a whole being self-supporting. And that really speaks, when you look at, like, even if you had all the money in the world, if my home group had a bank in its prudent reserve of $10,000, but nobody wanted to chair a meeting, it's not self-supporting. if we have all the money to put on the greatest events or the greatest things, but nobody to show up and carry the message, it's not self-supporting, right? So the money thing is just a little part of that. We always will need people to help self-support way more than the money. The money, it's an important thing, obviously. Everything needs money to operate. We need money to pay our rent for the room or buy literature to sell at meetings or to while we were on Zoom to keep the Zoom membership going. We need money for those things. But we need people's time and creativity and love and energy and passion as much as we need that money. Because in my opinion, the money's only going to take us so far. All those other things could, expand a group to unimaginable new levels, in my opinion. That's just how I look at it. So I love this quote, and it's a long quote, but I really, really love this quote. So, sorry it's so long, but it says from the literature, we commit to making sure that the fellowship will be here when an addict reaches out for help. We may express that commitment in many ways. Ultimately, it is how our gratitude speaks. All of this happens through the energy, love, hard work, commitment, and generosity of addicts who have come together in desperation and found a new way to live. And that is the truth. So much more than just money. When we come together from a unified perspective, we are able to be self-supporting. And that's why, I admit when I first came into the program, I was like, oh yeah, 7 Tradition, that's about money. Cool. But it's not. It's so much more than that. Of course, money's always going to be a factor because, it's money. And we live in a capitalistic society. That's what it is. But it's so much more than that. And I'm going to close with this quote, which I very much love. And it says, when we support ourselves responsibly, we are rewarded in confidence, dignity, and freedom. We are responsible members of society today, and the reward for that is hope for the future. Because I can tell you, by being part of a group that's self-supporting, by being more self-supporting myself, I feel confidence, I have dignity, and I have freedom. And I know that the future is going to hold even more of those things. So that's what we got. Like I said, this was a pretty straightforward tradition today. It was pretty straightforward, but I wanted to give some understanding of it, kind of explain how we tie it in to our lives within our recovery and give a little bit more information about it. Next week, we're going to be going into Tradition 8 on episode 20. How is it possible? Episode 20? Absolutely nuts. So that's what we've got. Hopefully you got something out of that. Hopefully you have a little bit better understanding about the 7th tradition, how it ties into things, especially things that aren't money. So now, let's get into our next segment of the week, entitled My Favorite Moment of the Week. I have to say, we still are not sponsored by Bang. That is on me. I have not reached out to them. But as always, I am drinking a Bang energy drink for this segment, or really for life in general. And Bang, I'm going to use this as evidence because I have text messages from a viewer on this podcast who specifically now drinks Bang energy because of me talking about Bang energy. So, Bang energy drinks, sponsorship, bruh. Plus, it'd be really perfect timing to have a little drop right there so I can get a drink since, I talk a lot and my throat gets a little parched. So what are we going to talk about this week? What were my favorite moments of the week? Well, this is the part of the show where I like to discuss something over the past week that has occurred. It can be from news, it can be from pop culture, sports, Marvel, from Instagram, possibly from TikTok, because god damn, there's a lot of TikTok appearances on this show. I'm still not on TikTok. I will be on Pornhub before I am on TikTok. I am not on TikTok, but send me those TikToks, please. Please. We're actually going to have another TikTok experience today as well. So this is just my opinion. This is not much experience, strength, and hope. This is just something for me. But, I can't pick one favorite moment. I got a bunch of moments. And we already know what we're starting with. Because goddamn, the NBA playoffs, yo. Oh my God, so much has happened since last week. As we see, I got my Suns hat on. We got a big game 2 of the Western Conference Finals today. We have not lost any game that I've been wearing this hat. I know superstition is bullshit, but right now, we're believing this shit. That part. Hat is on. We got to talk about what happened leading up to that. So first off, the Clippers finishing off the number 1 seed of Utah without Kawhi. Terrence Mann just went nuts. Also, have to give a shout out to a very loyal listener of this podcast, my boy Yehuda, who after the Clippers won Game 3, predicted that the Clippers would not lose another game to the Jazz, and he was correct. You get a golf clap, my brother. Well done. Next up, we got to talk about the Hawks versus the 76ers. Game 5. I don't know if it was, I think I have to go with it was more of a collapse by the 76ers than it was a win by the Hawks, because the Hawks were down by 26 points. They scored 40 points in the fourth and won the game. And Sixers came back, forced a Game 7, and then the Hawks close out Game 7. And it was crazy because even though Trey had an off game, he was looking like previous playoff P. Paul George. He went like 6 for 25. But the Hawks just had answers. And they also had help from one of the 76ers players named Ben Simmons. Poor Ben Simmons. Oh, poor Ben Simmons. In 7 games of that series, in the fourth quarter, he attempted 3 field goals. 3. He's their number 2 option. And he attempted 3 field goals over 7 games in the fourth quarter. One of them, he had a dunk right there, and he passed it. What are you doing? You're 6'10", bruh. And then we don't even need to get into his free throw shitting. We aren't calling it free throw shooting because he shot 34% from the line. That is the worst in history. His free throw performance was the worst in history. And that is a history that includes the big Shaqtus Shaquille O'Neal, who, when he would be shooting a ball, it looked like a little pebble in his hand, and he just kind of flailed up there. And he shot better in a series than Ben Simmons did. I love Ben Simmons' defensive game, but I'm telling you right now, he will not be in Philly next year. And I don't think he'll ever be any team's number 2 option. I think he maybe just needs to embrace that mindset, kind of like Patrick Beverley, that he's just a defensive specialist, and that's just what he does. That's it. He's not a number 2 option. Bucks versus the Nets. They up next. Game 5. Kevin Durant went full-on lunatic mode, dropped 49 points, 17 rebounds, 10 assists. Lunatic mode. He just went fuck a sicko mode. He went straight lunatic mode. Game 6, Middleton. He goes nuts. Now we got Game 7 in Brooklyn. Where Brooklyn at? Well, they weren't winning in Game 7. I didn't get to see any of this game live. I was celebrating, as we'll discuss a little bit further on in my favorite moment of the week. I was celebrating somebody's clean time. So I was at my home group. And I will admit, I definitely had the game app, the Google app open on my phone, and I was seeing how the game was going back and forth. But apparently, it was the best game of the playoffs. Went into overtime when Durant nails a shot at the buzzer. And he was literally a half shoe size away from winning that game. But his foot was his little toe was bitty on the line. And he just tied it up, and they go to overtime. And I mean, both teams were just playing out their mind. Both Harden and Durant played 53 minutes. Durant dropped 48 points. Yanni Vowles ended up playing 50 minutes with 40 points and 13 rebounds, and they take it. And yes, I was completely wrong with my Eastern Conference final predictions. So now we got the Bucks versus the Hawks. I'm saying Bucks in 5. Charles Barkley said the Bucks were going to sweep them, and that means we know the Bucks are going to lose at least one game. So Bucks in 5. Next up, Suns versus Clippers. Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. Game 2's tonight. Holla. First off, got to give a shout out to James Jones for winning NBA Executive of the Year. Love it. He's done an incredible, incredible job. Also got to give a shout out to the Suns and 4 guy. If you are anywhere on any kind of sports social media, you've seen homie getting in a fight with a Denver Nuggets player who had poured a beer on his head, proceeds to land like, it wasn't like a 3-piece, it wasn't a 5-piece, it was a 10-piece bucket. It was a 10-piece KFC bucket on this dude, and then proceeds to go Suns and 4, which he wasn't wrong. But this dude is blown up. Like, he was hosting a pre-party before the game, was at the game because Devin Booker, the star of the Suns, reached out to this dude to make sure they got him tickets, and he was hosting the after party at the Riot House nightclub here in Scottsdale, Arizona. He's even on Cameo. You can go on Cameo, and you can have homie record a video. The Suns and 4 dude record a video. He's got merchandise. He's got little action figures now. It's ridiculous, but I can't hate on it. And while I don't condone violence, I do not condone violence. I do condone self-defense. And I also have to say that the violence between that and the Twisted Tea guy, like, those might be the 2 best memes we've had in 2021, honestly. Those might be the best. But now to the actual game, because all that other shit's trivial. Even though it's fun seeing everybody with these damn Suns and 4 shirts. Low-key, I'm probably going to buy one, because why not? But the game, no Kawhi Leonard, no Chris Paul. Back and forth game. One of the best playoff games I've seen in a long time. Bucket for bucket. Then each team would go on a little run. Then the next team go on a little run. It was a whole thing. Clippers looked tough. Playoff P. I don't even think we can make fun of him as playoff P with his 4 for 40 shooting. He's looking non-playoff P-ish. He had 34 points. DeMarcus Cousins came in and even kind of started almost looking like old school Boogie. Defense was getting way too many turnovers from us. Like, there was some moments in there. But the Suns not only played amazing team basketball, all 5 of our starters were in double figures. But Devin Booker, he's a savage. He's a savage. When he takes over a game, Stephen A. Smith commented that he is the next thing that we've had to Kobe. And in a lot of ways, I really see those comparisons. 40-point triple-double. Every time that the Clippers would start to do something, he'd be like, nah, I got this. I got this. And he kept doing this little curl, little free throw shot, very similar to Chris Paul's like signature shot, and he just hit it time after time after time, and his unselfish play, amazing. Absolutely amazing. I am so hyped for tonight's game. It actually, I believe, is starting in 8 minutes. I will admit I had an unspiritual thought of like, maybe I should just, do the podcast early today. But no, podcast is more important. We're out here helping people, more important. That was my favorite moments, NBA basketball. Cool. Moving on. Gotta say, we're going to do a new segment on this part called my weekly fitness update. And the reason I'm doing this is because it's helping keep me accountable. Plus, maybe it'll help, somebody else on their fitness journey. I worked out 4 days this last week. I was very happy. I put up 225 on the flat bench with no spot for 2. Was happy about that. I actually did squats for the first time in 15 months, and I am feeling it today. All of my parts hurt, especially my butt. Still hate my health, still hate squats. Know that for a fact. I will say, we're going to start doing this as a weekly thing, see where my weight's at. I am currently, as of right before this podcast, 216 pounds, 0.8. 216.8 pounds. Wow. We're going to do that. That isn't for y'all. This is for me, just to keep me accountable. There was some amazing TV this past week. We got to talk about Loki for a second. Episode 2 was stellar. As much as like the first episode was set up, this second episode really felt so much more involved with like the MCU of the past. There was a conversation that Loki's having with Owen Wilson's character about what if he just pushed Hulk off the bridge in Asgard. And like those tie-ins to past MCU films, I felt was more direct than what we got, or at least the vibe than what we got with Falcon and the Winter Soldier or WandaVision, especially in the beginning. The Pompeii scene was the best Tom Hiddleston can be as Loki, as far as I'm concerned. There has to be some scene in the show with Owen Wilson riding a jet ski. If not, missed opportunity. The conversations towards the end where he's having a conversation with another version of himself was amazing. And the final payoff, the last like 30 seconds of it were amazing. Not going to spoiler alert it. But that ties into my favorite moment of the week from TikTok. This week on TikTok, there was an amazing video that was sent to me. Thank you for the TikTok plug there. Detailing a theory that, in fact, the TVA is actually inside of the quantum realm. The quantum realm being, where the Avengers were able to do their time travel heist, where Ant-Man and the Wasp and, all of them are partaking in. And there's evidence for this. One thing, if you notice in the quantum realm, there's a city in the background. Very well could be the TVA. Also, everybody says time moves differently. It's been quoted through the quantum realm and through the TVA. Exact same quote. Also, Kang the Conqueror, we talked about it last week. He is one of the original timekeepers. He is going to be an Ant-Man and the Wasp. Quantumania. Quantum realm. Checks out. Mind blown. Watch Loki every Wednesday on Disney+. Gotta say, happy Father's Day to everybody. Hope everybody out there had a wonderful Father's Day. I got to spend it with my son. Got to watch the Suns game, hang out with a bunch of family. Great Suns win. Next up on TV, Dave returned. If you don't watch Dave, I love Dave. I've always thought Lil Dicky was funny as hell, and his show was very well done. First episode wasn't that great. Second was amazing. You can watch that live, on FX or on Hulu the next day. And what, FX, can we get season 3 of Atlanta? Can that happen? Like, please? I love Dave, but can we get Atlanta? Another favorite moment of the week, I got to meet one of my sponsees that originally we linked up. He called the phone line and was, sent to me, and we started talking, and I've been working with this dude for the last 311 days now. And I actually got to meet him for the first time. So that shows that addicts can get clean during the pandemic and stay clean through the pandemic. Love that. Also, Rick and Morty Season 5 was fire. Premiered last night. I loved the superly overly sexed Namor ripoff. But why can't Morty and Jessica ever why can't it happen? I'm not romantic at all, but the inner romantic in me really wants it to happen. But it was really weird watching it censored because I always watch it on either Hulu or HBO Max where it's not censored. So that was really weird. Regardless, great episode. And one more thing that I got to talk about before we get into my favorite moment of the week is Carl Nassib, officially coming out as the first openly gay NFL player currently playing. And I know for a lot of people, it's why does that fucking matter? Who cares? But it matters because the more that the fact that it happened means that it can happen more. And if that can help one person who's struggling, coming to grips with who they truly are and admitting that in their profession, if that can help one person, that is beautiful. So I had to, it's stupid that it has to be an announcement, but it is a major moment for the NFL because the NFL has always been kind of the last bastion of you're the manliest of manly things, the toxic masculinity, super straight man. But now this could be a huge change for that. And I'm curious. I'm really curious to see what's going to come from here. So shout out to him. That's awesome. And officially, I just, inclusivity, I love that personally. But we're going to get to my actual favorite moment of the week. And that was kind of a collection of a couple different moments. But that was this element of the world getting back to a sense of normalcy. As we're going to give her a shout out here in a couple minutes, one of my really good friends, Emily, celebrated 5 years clean. And this is somebody I've known my entire, recovery, really close friend. And so at my home group, we were celebrating. And it was the first time since I've been going back to in-person meetings that there were so many of the same old faces, because everybody came out to celebrate. And it was so beautiful, just sitting in that home group and seeing, and it's always beautiful to be in a meeting and see faces there. But to see faces of people that have been a part of my recovery for 3.5 years it just felt so much like home again, even more so. Like I've talked about that before. Like, it's the more that life's been getting back to normal, it's been feeling a little bit more natural and more like home. And this time it felt the most like home it's felt. Other fun little thing that was kind of my higher power, making sure to keep my shit in check. I was wearing this shirt that night, and I was feeling myself a little bit. Just a little bit. I was feeling myself a little bit. It fit me quite well. My arms were kind of doing a little thing. I definitely looked at myself a couple times in the mirror, and I was like, all right, yeah, this is what we're going to wear. Yeah, my arms look good. Proceed to go to my home group. And I'm not saying I'm a big dude. I'm not saying I've got huge muscles, obviously. But that night, they were feeling good. Until this absolute jacked fucking muscle shark motherfucker comes walking in there, and he's got muscles on top of muscles on top of muscles. So my higher power, making sure that my ego is like, boop, nah, bruh, sit down. My ego sat down. Yeah, I had to throw that in there because that was just too funny of the timing of it. Another thing was really cool is afterwards we actually all went out to eat dinner. And it was so weird being with a group of people in a restaurant. Like, I still wore my mask. People talk shit to me for wearing my mask. I don't give a fuck. That's what I need to feel comfortable, to feel all right, to feel safe. Let me live. I don't talk shit to y'all for not wearing masks. Let me live. But it was just the vibe of it. It was so much fun being back with a group of 15, 20 people. And there's like 10 different conversations going on. And, 10 different people talking to this and this person joking. And then it's like hopping from different conversation to different conversation. And it was so much fun. It was so much fun having that vibe because that was the vibe of 2.5 years of my recovery, or at least 2 years of my recovery was that vibe. And then for a year plus, that was gone. And now it's coming back. Another little funny side note of that is that I kind of forgot about the fact that we were out at dinner with people that I feel like had known me for 3.5 years, but I feel very sorry for the individual who was sitting next to me between myself and my other very, very loud, over-the-top friend, and we were having a very animated conversation about, just topics that were very shocking and jarring for him, and I had to then apologize and be like, sorry, bro, you've only known me for like a month or two. My bad. But the funniest thing about all of it is that I forgot, or I never really realized how just tiring being social is. I'm out of practice, man. I used to be able to bust through, night of game nights and hanging out with whatever, and I got home that night and I was like, wow, I'm mentally exhausted. Like, that was a lot. But it was so worth it. Being able to celebrate people and just feeling that group connection was absolutely amazing. So that was my favorite moment of the week, was the fact that normalcy feels like maybe, just maybe, it is starting to return. And I'm quite happy about that, even though, yes, I will still be wearing my mask. So that's what we've got for this week's favorite moment of the week. If you have anything that popped up over the next week, send it over my way. If it's any cool news stories or, wholesome content or like dog videos or little puppies or kitties or, whatever, definitely TikToks, whatever it is, send it over. It might end up being my favorite moment of the week. You never know. Of course, you can always send it to me on any social media platform. I am listed on every single one of them, and the best way to get to all of them is go to www.cleanandfilthypodcast.com and subscribe on all the social media links. So let's get into our next segment of the week called
It's time to ask an addict with your host, Matthew M.
That's right. It is time for our next segment entitled Ask an Addict. I am an addict. I am the resident addict of the Clean and Filthy podcast, and I am here to answer questions that are submitted by listeners and viewers. Now, these questions do not have to be recovery related. They can be. I love answering recovery questions, but they do not have to be. They can be about anything. This is like a Reddit AMA. Ask me anything. I just like answering questions. If you have questions that you would like to submit to this part of the show, you can, of course, go to the website, send them directly through the Contact Us page, or send them over to me at any of my social media handles. I love answering questions. So please, if you have a question, no questions too small or too big or too crazy or whatever, just send them over and maybe they will get answered on air. So for this week, first question we got was from one of my friends who's not in recovery. She's a normie. She says, I have trouble remembering everything. Like, I can't remember dates or birthdays or whatever. How do you keep track of your clean time or like anniversaries and stuff? And I'll admit, with the amount of drugs I've done and how fried my brain is in a lot of ways, I can't do that on my own. I've got 2 different calendar apps specifically for my clean time. And then I put events on my calendar for every single person's clean time that pops up. It's a little sad when, people leave the program and you have to delete their thing off the calendar, but it's part of reality. So I physically cannot do it by myself. The other thing, even for doing like this podcast, I set myself note reminders on my phone 10 times a day, which is also kind of fun because then when I do the thing that I set a reminder for, I get to feel accomplished because I accomplished something. But that's the only way that I know how to do it. So I couldn't tell you how many days I have without looking at my clean time app. I couldn't tell you. I could tell you in the beginning when, from 30 days to 31 days, that was a struggle. I was counting those hours. But once you start, getting a few 24 hours together, it just becomes so regular life that kind of lose track of the days a little bit. So that's clean time apps, day counter apps are the way to go. I also use my clean time app to not only count my clean time, but also count down the days until the Run to Jewels concert. Hooray! All right, next question. This is a funny question. It says, what stores am I legally not allowed to shop in? As we've talked about before, I've had some legal issues based on my active addiction and the things that I did to, find ways and means to get more. So I am completely banned from all Walmarts and all Sam's Clubs. I am currently in the process of trying to get my rights reinstated to Walmart because one of the ways that I want to help, make my amends to Walmart is by being able to legally shop there. I am not saying that because of the pandemic and the fact that we are forced to wear masks, I am not saying that I have shopped at Walmart during this time. I'm not saying that because I don't know if there's a statute of limitations on trespassing charges. I don't think there is, but I'm not going to find out. So I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that I would like to be able to support the stores that I have done harm to in the past. Another one is Ace Hardware. Yeah, I'm not allowed in like 3 or 4 different Ace Hardwares. That's one that I really don't know exactly how because each one is individually franchise owned, so I don't know how I'm going to be able to really make that right. We'll probably get around to that one on my next 8th and 9th step. And then there's also ones that I feel guilt towards, like the Albertsons next to my house. When I ended up talking to them about why they were closing, they said, because of shoplifting. I was like, yeah, I felt a little bit of guilt for that one. And also Toys R Us, man. I believe I know I had a part in that. Maybe it's just me feeling like I'm, more special or whatever, but I really do believe that my actions towards Toys R Us led to it not being there anymore. And people would ask, why? Why were you stealing shit from Toys R Us? Because apparently when I'm super twacked out, my inner child just ran amok and I needed to have every single toy I could ever want. Why? I don't fucking know. I really don't know. I can't explain the thought process of a human being that's been up for multiple days and just feels like the most important thing in the world is making sure that I have every single one of the keychains to match the other Deadpool. I don't know. Fucking drugs, man. Drugs are bad. Just that part. I don't know. I wish I had a better explanation than that. I wish it was something wanted something, so I did this to make money. No, I just stole them because I wanted to. because it was like in my drug addlepated brain, it was like, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I need to do. I don't know. I don't understand it. So those are the stores that I am physically not allowed into. There's a couple Home Depots that if I walked in there and saw the right person, they might give me a second look. There are definitely some other stores that things have occurred in, but never was I arrested or physically removed from the store. I had some issues at a Safeway one time where this person just gave me shit for how long it was taking me to shop, and then I proceeded to act very unspiritually in return when they told me to leave the store. And I'm like, I've been shopping. They're like, you've been here for 6 hours. I'm like, oh, yeah, well, time operates different, not just in the quantum realm, not just at the TVA, but also in the super fucking high brain of an addict. So yeah, those are the places. Yeah, not a lot of spirituality or hope in that part, but I'm in the process of trying to repay my debt to society and become available and allowed to go to those places. Great question. Next question. Thank you, my buddy, for this one. This was the one that I said it was asked a couple weeks ago, but I didn't want to have too much Lamborghini content in back-to-back episodes. So, a couple weeks have gone. Now it's time to get back to some Lamborghini content. Great question. It was said, what would be my ultimate Lamborghini to drive? Now, just like with all the other questions that this wonderful individual has asked me, I put layers to this shit. I couldn't just give an answer. No. Couldn't just give an answer. I had to qualify, quantify, break it down, research it. That's what I had to do. So I'm going to say, I would be happy to drive any Lamborghini. It could be the oldest ass like Silhouette or Yalpa or a fucking totaled ass Gallardo that barely turns on. I don't care. If it was a Lamborghini, I want to drive it. That would be amazing. But I want to clarify. His question said to drive, not to own. Because my answer of what would be to own would be different than what to be to drive. To simply drive, get in, drive, hopefully on a racetrack, get out, have all the greatest social media content ever. Cool. Definitely be on TikTok for that. So I also had to put some clarifications that this must be a street legal car. And it must not be a concept car. So we're not going to be talking about the Sesto Elemento. We're not going to be talking about the Terzo Millennio or the Vision Gran Turismo, which is ridiculous, or the Egoista, which might be the most ridiculous concept Lamborghini's ever made. We're not going to talk about those. But I highly recommend that you go and check out all of them on Google. They're all fire. So I had to break it down to a top 3. The first one on my list, that was the first thought, was because it was the most brand new, was the C.A.F FKP37. It is the first hybrid Lamborghini. Only 67 will ever be made. 808 horsepower V12 with the electric motor assistance, 217 top speed, 2.6 or 2.46 million, something stupid. But that is not my choice. I had to acknowledge it because it's the newest. It's the newest Lamborghini there is. And I mean, just to be able to drive the newest, craziest thing would be sick. That would be the one that I would probably have the most likelihood of being able to actually drive, for the record. But it's not what my choice was. The second choice. We're getting a little more rare here. And we're going throwback. We're going throwback to the first car that I truly fell in love with. That made me just have this lustful yearning for Lamborghini, and that is the Diablo. And in 2001, as the last Diablo model ever to be made by Lamborghini before they, transitioned to making the Murcielago, was a Diablo VT 6.0 SE. And there were 40 of them ever made. There was technically even another model that was even more exclusive where they only made 20 of it. But I couldn't find enough research to actually look into it. So we're just going with this one. 40 ever made, 6.0 liter V12, 549 horsepower. And honestly, pretty possible to own. The last one sold for like 600 grand. Cool. But my absolute favorite Lamborghini to drive, not to own, but to drive is the Lamborghini Veneno Coupe. It's essentially, if you haven't seen the car, it's essentially if like an Aventador and like an F-16 fighter jet just hardcore fucked. Like just smashed hardcore. That's what it looks like. It's the most like out there, outrageous looking Lamborghini that isn't a concept. And there's only 3 of the coupes in existence. There's only 12 of them in the world. There's 9 convertibles, 3 coupes. 2 of them are in America, for the record. One of them owned by Chris Singh, who has one of the most incredible car collections ever. I highly recommend following him on Instagram if you like cars at all. He paid $4 million for it. What did he get for $4 million? Not only did he get a 6.5 liter V12 with 740 horsepower, he also got the exclusivity of having one of 3. When he bought it, he got to pick out if he wanted it to have the green trim, the white trim, or the red trim. Because there were 3 options. They were all carbon fiber with just a trim color. That's the only difference on them. He paid $4 million for it. And now it is probably worth about 10, I would guess. I don't think he's ever going to sell it. He doesn't have to. He's got all the money ever. So that would be my car to drive. At some point, I'm going to have to make a trip down to Miami. And, you know, I'm not saying I'm going to stalk where Chris Singh lives. I'm saying that I'm going to position myself strategically with a tent and a camera on a block that might be frequented by Mr. Singh when he is leaving in either his Lamborghini or his Koenigsegg or his Pagani. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not saying anything more than that, but I would to see that car, just to see that car. Whoo! To sit in that car. Woo woo! To drive that car, bro. Whew. Ah. Yeah, that makes me feel tingly. Like low key, that makes me feel tingly. That's probably unhealthy. But whatever, I digress. So thank you for the question there. That would be my ultimate Lamborghini to drive. But again, I default to any Lamborghini. Any of them. I don't understand how it's my favorite car, has been my favorite car since I was a child, and I've never even gotten to sit in one when it was running. That's not a thing. I need that to happen. So we're gonna reach out to Lamborghini Scottsdale. We're gonna get something going here. That's what's gonna happen. So that's what we got for my third segment, which is Ask an Addict. If you have any questions that you would like to be answered by myself, again, they do not have to be recovery related. They can be about anything. They can be about Lamborghinis. They can be about sports, whatever. I like answering questions. Make sure to send them over on any of my social media channels or just email them directly at Matthew@CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com. So we are almost out of time, but you know we can't close without them clean time shout outs. This is the part of the show where every week we celebrate people who have gotten different milestones within recovery. These are the universally celebrated milestones, which are 0 to 29 days being a newcomer, 30 days clean, 60 days clean, 90 days clean, 6 months clean, 9 months clean, 1 whole year clean, 18 months clean, or multiples of years. But we like to do it a little different here. We also like to give shout outs for those big numbers. So if you've got, 100 days, 500 days, 1,000 days, 10,000 days, whatever it is, send it over to me so we can give you a shout out as well. I love clean time shout outs. We talk about this every week. This is my favorite time of the show. It's when I get to get super hype. Thanks to Bang, that I'm still not sponsored by just for today. So this is what we do. So if you have a clean time anniversary or milestone coming up between now and next week's episode launching at 5 p.m., please send it over to me. Again, at any of the social media channels that I've listed about 15 times in this podcast. And I will give you a shout out on air. First up, first and foremost, we got a newcomer from Twitter, my boy Kevin. Well done. Welcome. And next up, we've got Kalisha with 90 days clean. Well done. And next up, with 1 year clean, we've got Courtney L. We give them boops for each year. And next up with 5 years clean, we got my girl Emily. Yeah. Well done. Hell yeah. And then next up with 8 years clean, we've got Aaron. Yeah. And then finally, with 15 years clean, we've got Jason L. Yeah. Well, we'll do one more just to make sure. That's what we do. Congratulations, everybody who celebrated Clean Time today. If you didn't celebrate Clean Time, don't use. And guess what? You will. It's literally how this program works. It's what we do here. So remember, every single day clean is a successful day. No matter if you picked up any clean time or not, as long as you didn't pick up and get loaded, it is a successful day. Well, y'all, we are officially just about out of time for today. But I want to say thank you to each and every person out there for being a part of this journey with me, for helping our numbers grow, from sharing this product to getting us out to other people. You know, I couldn't do this without any of you guys, and I'm just so grateful that you're allowing me the privilege of being able to help people, and you're helping me do that. So, again, huge thank you to our episode sponsor, Etc. by Emily. Huge thank you to Valentino Khan, Alice in Wonderland for this amazing song. Thank you all for being here. I hope to see each and every one of you next week, 5 p.m. Arizona time, live on YouTube. And as I always say, as I said earlier, I love each and every one of you. If nobody told you that they love you today, I love you. Thanks for being a part of my recovery.
I just wanna feel it.